Hey everybody, welcome back to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm your host, Gordo Gambles, and welcome back to another full card breakdown. This time for UFC Vegas 73, we are back at the Apex and we are talking about Angela Hill versus Mackenzie Dern. We have ourselves another 12-fight slate coming to us, a nice one this Saturday here, and one that's going to be a bit redundant for me because a lot of this card you're going to hear me say, well, this is not the best level of competition, be cautious, and that's kind of what this is. This is a very regional scene-like event. And despite the low levelness, despite you may not being able to recognize all the names, I do think it's be one that's going to be very, very entertaining. It's one that I foresee a lot of violence, one with a few underrated scraps, and one that I'm excited to dive into. Quickly, last week, betting-wise, did okay. I thought we could have got the sweep there with Stamen. The referee decision to round one doesn't really matter too much. DraftKings-wise, some very good underdog calls in Matt Brown, but I also whiffed. I didn't have enough battle. That cost me in the long run, but I did end up doing okay, ended up cashing there. Not a bad time. Once again, though, we are going to break down this 12-fight slate from a DraftKings and betting perspective. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below. Please also be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. If you have any comments about the new setup or the audio or anything you have that way, please let me know. Let's dive into it. And as I'm diving into it, wow, we have ourselves a fight announcement. As I'm recording this on Tuesday, they just announced the UFC 291 card in Salt Lake City. Poirier-Gaethje main event. You got Alice Scarov's the name that jumps off the page there. Tony Ferguson coming back. Blachowicz versus Ferreira. That card's absolutely insane. We'll be happy to talk about that one too. But wow, what a wrench into my plans here. Because there's nothing really like thinking about those high-level fights when you have to break down Takashi Sato 16-6 versus Themba Gorimbo 10-4. It's a fun fight at 170, but one that is definitely of the lower end of the spectrum. Takashi Sato 2-4 inside the UFC. Themba Gorimbo 0-1, making his second walk here. And this is a very classic striker versus grappler matchup. I'm not going to beat too much around the bush. This is a lower-level fight, and this is also one that I do think is going to be a very violent affair, but one that is very, very binary. As I like to mention, these first fight of the night, usually there is a lot of violence revolving around it, and I do think that this trend continues here. I do think a finish materializes. But how? The question seems to be really simple. We have seen Takashi Sato finished and beaten a multitude of ways. He's been submitted twice, he's been knocked out, most recently by Brian Battle, and has been controlled to a decision. There are many ways to beat Takashi Sato. I'm not saying Sato is horrible, but we can see a very, very large hole in his ground game, in his takedown defense, and just his ability to return to the feet. In addition to this, he can be submitted, and although he's a very, very competent striker with a lot of power, he doesn't also have a ton of accuracy or volume to go out there and win fights at a very, very high clip, albeit against this high-level competition. Themba Gorimbo, on the other hand, has done okay. He's not going to blow you away with his skill set, but he is a primary grappler. And although he hasn't faced that same level of competition, he is going to have the grappling edge in this spot here. He shoots for takedown early and often. He was able to land something against AJ Fletcher, who I think is harder to take down than Takashi Sato is here. And I think that he is going to have the large advantage on the ground. I think he has a very competent ground game. He's very submission over position sometimes, but sometimes that bodes well for him to win these fights. Aside from this, he knows his game plan, he knows his style, and he knows he wants to take it there. On the feet, it's going to be clear Sato. He's going to have the much better technical striking, and although there's that huge reach and height advantage for Gorimbo here, it's going to be Sato edging this out here. And although I do think it's decently close, there's no question Sato's a better striker. The plan then revolves around, can Gorimbo land takedowns? Can he get that control time, and can he get Sato out of there? Because I think over the long run, Sato's going to take over in the feet and could add another finish loss to Gorimbo's record by strikes. However, if Gorimbo gets off in his game plan, his takedowns might be enough. Not only does he have decent control time, but a very competent ground game to likely get Sato out of there by submission. I mean, he was submitted by Bilal Muhammad, high-level opponent, but a guy who doesn't finish anybody. He was submitted by Miguel Baeza. Gorimbo has these long limbs and this decent ground game to be able to get Sato out of there. So if you can't tell by now, in these striker versus grappler matchups, I like my wrestlers, and I do think Gorimbo's going to be someone I'm looking to bet this week because I do think he has a clear path to victory. Now, with that being said, $8,000 on DraftKings, he is a core play of mine this week, and I know it's risky with such a low-level fight, but I do think he's a clear grappling advantage here. At $8K, when your path to victory involves takedowns, a potential finish, and control time, all at an underdog price at 8K, he is someone I'm looking to target. I think he is a very, very sneaky DraftKings option this week, and he's someone I'll definitely be looking to roster. I'm not cutting out Sato of my exposure pool completely, but his path to victory is more so striking. He doesn't have all those different metrics, and he's going to be a bit lower owned on that end. However, a fun fight to get the night started. Next up, 14-5-1, Natalia Silva, Victoria Leonardo coming back at 9-4, and we have ourselves the biggest favorite on the card, and therefore, we have a quick breakdown. 9.7K Natalia Silva, she is your cash play. She is your safety net. She is someone who should win this fight at a very, very high clip. Like I said, I don't want to go too in-depth to this matchup, but Silva's going to have the advantage in a lot of places. She has seen to level up. She has shown great takedown defense, incredible striking on the feet, very good power as well. And going up against someone in Victoria Leonardo who seems to be kind of this middle point where she doesn't excel at anything, but she's decent at everything. Natalia Silva's going to have the edge almost everywhere, and that is where that price tag is the way it is. A little hard to bet there at minus 1,000, so instead, if you want to bet Silva, take the inside the distance line. And it's not always something you want to do in women's MMA, but when Victoria Leonardo has been finished in all of her losses, and Silva's looked as dangerous as she has recently, I do think Silva gets her out of there. With that being said, can she get her out of there, and can she live up to her 9.7K DraftKings tag? That's where things are questionable, because in her 2 wins, she scored 85 and 85 again, and those are against, I would say, high-level opponents in Bleda and Jasovicius, but it's going to be really hard for her to go out there, reach her 9.7K salary, and beat the people with the likes of Hernandez, Buckley, and Dern, all people who rate out much better with their finish ability. For that reason, if you need a safe anchor, a cash play, Silva might be the one to go to, because I do think she wins this fight at a very, very high clip. She's very hard to get to her. Other side of things, Leonardo is a complete fade for me. This is where things get interesting. 11-3-1 Chase Hooper, 6-1 Nick Fiore, and this has kind of divided the MMA Twitter world this week, and for good reason. And I was part of a couple discussions in some group chats I was in. I told a lot of people there, if Hooper was able to dodge punches the same way it looks like he dodged puberty, maybe he'd be a bigger favorite in the spot here. Because what really seems to remain true is Chase Hooper's a guy who is going to have the experience advantage and who I think has a lot of potential. Nick Fiore, 6-1, a guy who made a very, very good account of himself against Mateus Uzbeki, is someone we haven't seen aside from that. You got 2 wins against Jay Ellis. Good for you. Who doesn't at this point, right? And that's kind of the big concern here, is at level of competition. Because I do think when it comes to a stylistic matchup here, Chase Hooper seems to struggle with his physicality, and he's up there and he's moving up a weight class. So how is he able to implement his stellar ground game when he can't get people down to the ground? I do think Nick Fiore is very physically imposing. For that reason, it's hard to really rely on Chase Hooper. Here's a caveat though. Nick Fiore doesn't have that same knockout threat that Steve Garcia had in the past, or other people who have rocked Chase Hooper in the past had. And not really the type of guy to take advantage of that poor striking defense that Chase Hooper has. Instead, Fiore likes to grapple, he likes to exchange, and doing so, you're kind of giving Chase Hooper a path to victory here. Aside from that, when it comes to cardio, Fiore has kind of slowed down over the stretch, and Chase Hooper may look a bit better up a weight class. I know it's not going to help his physicality, but it may be able to help his cardio. So where do I stand? I don't know if I want to bet on this one because it is so questionable, it is so volatile, and there are so many question marks we have around this fight. But I think the guy I can rely on more here is Chase Hooper. Because at what percentage does Nick Fiore out-grapple Chase Hooper? Not too often. And if I don't think he can out-cardio him to a convincing 3-round decision, and I don't think Nick Fiore has the power to put out Chase Hooper might be a viable underdog at the way these odds are lining up. For that reason, I don't mind a little bit of Chase Hooper this weekend. I don't mind him as to be the pick to win the fight, because I do think I can rely on him to put up a good account for himself. Again, it's never pretty betting on Chase Hooper, but I do think this is a matchup where he's able to get back on track. It is a good test for him. I'm not saying to go out there, hammer Chase Hooper. I'm just saying be careful playing Fiore, as popular I know he is this week. Be careful playing him on DraftKings, because he's not going to have that same knockout that has caused Hooper problems in the past. Instead, it's going to be a very physical battle, one that I think Chase Hooper will have the cardio advantage, and one that I think in these grappling exchanges, Chase Hooper is ever deadly. For that reason, give me Chase Hooper, a viable DraftKings play at 7.9. I do think he is an underdog to look out for. However, it is such a questionable fight, I wouldn't put too much confidence into this one. Next up, 16-8 Ilir Latifi versus 9-1 Rodrigo Nascimento. We have ourselves a heavyweight fight, and a very tough one to predict at that. Ilir Latifi is the guy with no neck, the guy who's very short and stocky, a guy who is fun to watch sometimes, but really he's not a lot of the time. The Sledgehammer has a slower pace, he's very plodding, very, very good takedown defense, a decent offensive wrestling game, but a low volume striker. Rodrigo Nascimento in this matchup is going to have a huge height advantage, and that's kind of been the big talking point this week, is Rodrigo Nascimento has the immeasurables. He's younger, he's taller, he's heavier, and he's got the longer reach. In addition to his, let's say, better output in this spot, he is someone who can go out there and who can win a decision at a very, very high clip. The problem is doing so is in a sloppy 265 decision where I don't think you're able to take down Ilir Latifi as much as you want to. How viable is Nascimento at 9K? I do think Nascimento is the rightful favorite, and I do think he wins this fight. However, you never dominate Ilir Latifi in that way, and for that reason, it's hard for me to go out there and choose him at 9K above the other people in this region. So this is kind of my roundabout way of saying pass. I don't really want too much of a financial investment on this fight. It is a very sloppy heavyweight matchup, one that I think you have a guy who's more talented versus a guy who's just harder to beat, in my opinion. I do think Nascimento is the rightful favorite. He's a bit wider of a favorite as I think he should be. Pass also in the DraftKings market as well. I think there are better fights in this one. This is not the one I'm looking forward to the most, but I will take Nascimento to edge at a decision. Next up, 8-1 Orion Cosce versus the 6-2 Gilbert Urbina, and this has gotten a lot of love for the underdog Gilbert Urbina this week, and I kind of get why. We have the matchup of two prospects who have flaws. And this is another very, very low-level bout here, where both these guys have shown ability to gas out, to struggle down the stretch, who have fought better level of competition and struggled that way, and have even lost to questionable level of competition. I mean, Cosce's out there getting knocked up by Philip Rowe in the second round, and Urbina's out there making Trishan Gore look like a god. It's tough really to get a read on these guys, but it is a good stepping stone for both of their careers. The question is, who prevails in this matchup? And I'm kind of leaning towards Gilbert Urbina in this spot here. I think that when it comes to a skill-for-skill battle, the guy who's more physically imposing, the guy who's going to be 4 inches taller with 3 inches more of reach, the guy who's coming down in weight is going to be Gilbert Urbina. Now, how does that affect him on the scale? That's another question, but I think he is going to have the ability to impose his ground game, which he likes to utilize so often, a lot easier in this spot here. On the feet, I think it's very, very close, but I think that physicality gives the edge to Urbina, and for that reason, I think he wins a fight that is contested for 5-10 minutes. The problem is we've seen his cardio fade, and although we have seen Cosce's cardio fade as well, the guy's got pretty good resistance, and he's still in that fight, and he's still out there winning third rounds against Blood Diamond and stuff like that. I think that he's a guy who really wants these fights. Meanwhile, if Urbina's not able to get him out there early, he kind of struggles down the stretch. How does that struggle look at 170 when he is cutting more weight? So, with that being said, I think the guy whose style bodes better for this matchup is going to be Gilbert Urbina. I think he's able to use his physicality to win the first 2 rounds. The problem with that is it gets very, very dicey after that. DraftKings-wise, I'm taking all 3 fighters right under 8K. 8K Gorimbo, 7.9 Hooper, and 7.8 Urbina. We'll talk about Demopulos later, but Urbina, I think, is someone who I think is viable in this matchup here. I think if he wins this fight, he has shown decent grappling and ability to control early on. Some decent takedowns, control time finish upside at 7.8. However, there is that risk that he does gas out, he does lose this fight, but I do think his upside is definitely there. Cosce will be a very overlooked favorite this week. I don't think he has much ownership at all, and if he goes out there and exploits that cardio of Urbina, he could be very, very sneakily owned. He is more of a dart throw for me this week. A sneaky fun fight here. Next up, 14-7 Karolina Kowalkiewicz versus the 9-4 Vanessa Dumopulos. This is another interesting matchup. Interesting seems to be the word of the day this week because it is one that is filled with, you don't want to comment on the prospect skill level or level of competition, but this is an interesting one for sure. Now, the truth is, as much as I hate to admit it, Vanessa Dumopulos has been a money train for me. I'm 3-0 betting for her, and I'm tempted to do it again here against someone in Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Now, Karolina is the favorite in this matchup, and I get why. She has fought some great level of competition. She looks to be improving her game, and she looks hungrier than ever to make a run towards the top. And I think that when it comes to an overall technical skill set, who is the better fighter here? Well, it is Karolina Kowalkiewicz, and it's not even close because she has the better wrestling, the better offensive striking, and the 1,000 times better defensive striking. The problem is Karolina has struggled with, I want to say adversity. She has struggled on the mat sometimes, and she is not a perfect fighter when it comes to winning decisions. Flip side of things, Vanessa Dumopulos is how do I put this one? She's no striking defense. She walks forwards, absorb punches with her face, and she looks to go and get you to the ground and get you out of there. She throws with reckless abandon. She goes out there and throws 1,000 strikes, even though only 5 of them will land. She'll take a couple to give more. And I think she's someone who definitely doesn't have the best style long term, but against these low level of competition, I do think she's able to have success. Now, in the grappling, I think Demopulos wins the BJJ exchanges, but I do think Karolina is the better wrestler, so can Vanessa get her there? That's the question. I'm very nervous, and I don't necessarily think she can too often. Karolina's shown to want to wrestle recently, and if she does want to do that, she's playing in a Demopulos game. But if this is a fight that stands on the feet for 15 minutes, I get why the line is so close. And this is because although Karolina is so much more of a better striker, Vanessa's kind of a problem on the feet because she is so aggressive, because she has no really regard for her own mental health. Because she will throw so often and cause pressure, that's why it is so interesting here. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to pick Vanessa Dumopulos to win this fight. However, there's no way I'm touching this fight from a betting perspective with a 10-foot pole. It is a very ugly one, but that's going to make it 4 DraftKings underdogs in a row under 8K. Gorimbo, Hooper, Urbina, and now Demopulos 7.7. I do think if she wins this fight, she has decent upside because it's going to involve takedowns, maybe a finish, and lots of volume. I think if she stays out range for 15 minutes, she loses the fight at a high clip. So her win condition is going to score decent. We've seen her put up more than 90 before. Maybe a sneakier option. Very questionable. Not my favorite underdog, but a viable one for sure. Flip side of things, I don't see Kowalkiewicz getting Demopulos out of there, and I don't see her wrestling too often if she wants to win this fight. So at 8.5, pass for me on that one. Next up, Slaviclaus Borshchev, 6-3, Maheshate, 9-2. Two absolute legends. I mean, can we just say that? Two legends off the Dana White Contender Series, and pretty simple breakdown. Neither of these guys are going to wrestle, and that's perfect because both of these guys have been wrestled. They're both horrible off the mat, and they finally get the striking battle we deserve as fans, and one they definitely are looking forward to here because they get to play their style of fight. And for that reason, it's pretty simple. In a kickboxing affair, Borshchev should be the favorite against a lot of this division. And yes, Maheshate has a ton of power in his boxing combinations. 4 wins by KO, decent volume, but he does not compare when it comes to the technicality, the precision, the really just overall striking ability of Fiahlo Borshchev. So for that reason, I'm picking Borshchev to win this fight, and I think he's able to do it pretty convincingly. Now, of course, there's always the opportunity for Maheshate to try to implement his wrestling, because if you do tape against Borshchev, you know that's the style I'm going to win this fight. Of course, also always the opportunity for him to land a bomb, but I think at a very, very high clip, Borshchev should win this fight, considering he does have such a superior skill set and the technicality on the feet. The problem is on DraftKings, because Maheshate seemed to be decently durable, so can Borshchev live up to 8.8K on DraftKings when there are people like Dern, Buckley, Hernandez on this slate here? Like, I do think he wins this fight, but he's not a good historical scorer because he doesn't have any grappling upside, and unless he's finishing this fight, he only has strikes to his name. So give me Borshchev to win this fight. I do think he wins it pretty convincingly. I'll be looking to play him on the money line. However, I do think there are better DraftKings options than this fight, considering I do expect it to be a 15-minute striking affair. We continue with the 17-5 Diego Ferreira versus the 21-18 Michael Johnson. 155 bout between two guys who are getting up there. 36 for Johnson, 38 for Ferreira, and both these guys are 2-3 in their last 5. Both these guys have struggled a bit, and both these guys you can like for their own reasons. Ferreira, you're not liking the way he's looking recently, but he's doing that against some elite level competition. Gamrot, Gillespie, Dariush. Flip side of things, at least Johnson's actually winning fights. He could, and he should, in my books, be 3-0 in his last 3, which is surprising to say for someone like Michael Johnson. That being said, it's pretty simple. Michael Johnson is the slip on a banana peel fighter, and if you're going to slip on a banana peel, don't do it against Ferreira. Ferreira is so good on the ground, he will submit you there. So Johnson will be winning the striking exchanges. He's the far superior striker in my opinion. Decent takedown defense, but if he allows one takedown at all, if he goes to the ground at all, it's Ferreira's world. Striker versus grappler. Gun to my head, the difference in the wrestling is larger than the difference in striking. For that reason, I gotta take Diego Ferreira. But this is not one I really want to play from the money line perspective. Instead, give me in on DraftKings, because I do think the winner scores decent. I mean, Ferreira kind of, losing 3 in a row to elite competition. If he is on his way out and the finish is there for Johnson, 7.5K, he could be very, very live to win this fight. Flip side of things, Ferreira's finish style, his grappling heavy style, can bode well, can score well on DraftKings, and he does have some very, very good UFC caliber wins. So I do think this fight is closer than the line entails, and I do get why there's money coming in on Michael Johnson. With that being said, I do think Ferreira wins this fight. I do think he has such a superior edge in the ground, and you got to hope if you're betting Michael Johnson, it doesn't end up there. Okay. 16-6 Andre Fiahlo, 15-6 Joe Queen Buckley. This is the hardest fight for me to call on this card because everything in my research is telling me to go Joe Queen Buckley. Everything is telling me that not only does he have better durability here, but he has more volume and he has wrestling in his back pocket. In addition, I do think he's working on his game and he's hungrier in this matchup. You want to know the problem is? The problem is my gut is telling me Andre Fiahlo wins this fight. My gut is telling me he's able to exploit the weaker striking defense of Joaquin Buckley and look to finish this fight the same way Buckley's been finished before. Fiahlo is very all gas, no brakes. He's going to go out there, kill it to be killed. I like his style, but it's not going to bode well against his better level of competition, and that's why Joaquin Buckley should be the favorite here. But I'm really tempted on Fiahlo. For some reason, my gut's telling me he's able to find that knockout shot. I do think he has I think he has a lot of dynamite in his hands, and he has decent striking. He lacks that defensive ability. And if I don't see Buckley going out there and wrestling proactively, it's a coin flip on the feet. So even if I don't get there in the betting window, I think Fiahlo is very, very live at 6.9K to go out there and get a finish win. In Fiahlo's wins, he's scoring 112, 106, both first-round finishes, and I do think a first-round finish is not off the table here. I think this is a fight that's going to be very, very volatile. I do think it ends one way or the other, considering the way the chins are for both fighters, but I'm taking the dog. I could look wrong. I think Buckley's a very, very good option, don't get me wrong, considering the chin of Fiahlo. I think that Buckley could get him out of there as well, but for some reason, I'm leaning towards Fiahlo. It's a very, very tough one to call. I do think he's very, very live on DraftKings this week, though. 3 fights to go. Lupi Godinez, 9-3. Emily Ducote, 12-7. And you guys know I love my girl Lupi Godinez. I think she's attracted one of the most backed fighters on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I mean, I love her style. Well, let's put an asterisk on that. I love her potential style because she is someone who is a very, very good wrestler. And when she's going out there and she's wrestling Carnelosi, look Boomy, she's looking great. But she hasn't done that. She's fallen in love with her hands. I mean, she lost to Hill. She could have lost to Calvillo in fights where she should be dominating with her style. She is so hard to trust. But in this matchup here, when she's facing someone who I think is going to be lesser experienced, when I do think there is such a good path to victory with the takedowns and control time of Godinez, I'm picking the Canadian girl to win the fight. Sure, okay, Canadian, Mexican, lived in Canada. We'll take Canadian. We need a good Canadian fighter here. Now, don't get me wrong. I think Ducote wins the striking, and I think that the catch weight, the short notice nature is always dangerous for Lupi Godinez. But when it comes to stylistic matchups and paths to victory, if Godinez goes out there, takes down Ducote, and lays in praise or controls her to a 15-minute decision, would anyone be surprised? Probably not. So I know Ducote is a decently popular dog this week, and I get why. However, at 8.6K, Lupi Godinez is the same girl who's gone out there, scored 127, 129. I mean, she has good upside if she uses her whole arsenal, which includes that wrestling. And I do have faith she does it this week. If that comes back and haunts me, well, that's my own fault there. So a very, very interesting matchup, but I'm going to trust in the potential of Lupi Godinez to go out there and wrestle her way to a victory. Close fight, though. Co-main event, 10-2, Anthony Hernandez, 12-3, Edmund Shahbazyan, and under. Just give me the under in this matchup because both these guys are going to play into each other's weaknesses. Let's put it that way. Edmund Shahbazyan was the golden boy, a guy who everyone's hyping up, who got thrown to the top too quickly, thrown to the wolves, and Derek Brunson exposed that. Edmund Shahbazyan is a very, very technically sound striker with a ton of power, good technicality, and an ability to win these fights early on. But he can be broken down the stretch. He can be taken down. He can be dominated. And Anthony Hernandez looks to dominate. He looks to go out there. He looks to wear you out and finish you. And he's done that against Rodolfo Vieira, Marc-Andre Barrio, many people where his style is just so fun to watch. So it's pretty simple. Edmund Shahbazyan is going to get another first-round knockout the same way Hernandez has been knocked out in the first round before. Or he's going to fade down the stretch and Anthony Hernandez is going to live off his price tag. Either way, I think a finish materializes, and I think that this is a fight you want on DraftKings. This is one of my highest owned fights purely because of the stylistic matchup. Anthony Hernandez, when he wins fights, he's scoring well. 120, 117, 94, 133. He is a phenomenal DraftKings scorer because when he wins these fights, he's scoring 8, and 6 takedowns. The only time he didn't land a takedown was when he submitted Vieira. Didn't need one there. He's a very, very good DraftKings scorer, and he's one of my highest owned DraftKings targets this week. Flip side of things, though, Shahbazyan, if he's going to win, it's going to come due to a very, very early stoppage. And when he does that, he scored 97, 130, 101, 115, and 94. All I'm saying is that if I see a finish materialize as often as I do, if I think it's either a early finish for Shahbazyan or a wear him down the stretch win for Hernandez, the winner's going to score well. This is my favorite fight to target and one that I think you should be targeting too this weekend. That being said, though, give me Hernandez to execute his game plan better. I wouldn't be surprised with a Shahbazyan knockout. I just think the most likely outcome is Hernandez uses his style to dominate Shahbazyan the same way we've seen him dominated before. And finally, we get to the main event, 12-3 Mackenzie Dern, 15-12 Angela Hill, and this is the easiest breakdown you're going to have. Can Dern get her down? That's really what it is, because Dern is going to have the submission game to really submit someone like Hill who has been submitted before, who has been put in precarious situations. It's there. And she has 5 rounds to get that takedown, get it done, but we said that same thing against Marina Rodriguez. And she was able to get her down once, and only once, and couldn't finish it, and lost that fight because of it. Now, I don't think Hill is as good as Rodriguez, but I do think Hill has some good grit, has the ability to fight through it, and is just a staple at this division. But Hill can be taken down. She's not perfect. She can be controlled. And although I do think she's winning a lot of these striking exchanges, the gap on the mat is a lot larger than the gap on the feet. So over 5 rounds, I think Dern's able to get at least 1 takedown, maybe a couple, and I do think she's able to finish the fight. If she doesn't, I think that she only needs 1 takedown to steal the round. I think it's a close one, and I'm not taking it, I'm not saying it's not a close one. I'm saying that, gun to my head, I'm taking Mackenzie Dern to win this fight, and she is the much better DraftKings option of the two. When Dern wins, she's scoring a lot better than Hill is in this spot here at 9.1. I do think she is someone who is very, very live for a finish, for takedown points, and for just a win bonus overall. I do think she is the preferred side for me in the main event. In cash, though, Hill is a very viable option because if she wins, she's going to have 5 rounds to work, lots of volume to put up because every second's on the feet, she's going to be needing to win those minutes there. So give me Dern in the main event. Very, very fun way to end the card. And honestly, despite the poor name value, a very, very fun fight overall. Let me quickly go over my quick picks, but please say this could be a tough one because there are so many low-level fights. I wouldn't be surprised if fights could go their way, but gun to my head, said it a few times already, my favorite expression, we're taking Mackenzie Dern, we're taking Anthony Hernandez, Lupi Godinez, we're going with the gut, and we're saying Andre Fiahlo, but please take that with a grain of salt. Diego Ferreira, Filashev Borshchev, Vanessa Demopulos, Gilbert Urbina, Rodrigo Nascimento, Chase Hooper, Natalia Silva, and Themba Gorimbo. Some of those names disgusted me to say. Some of those things are really dangerous for me. But please play those money lines safely because it is a very dangerous betting card. DraftKings wise, I do think it's a lot of fun though. I think you got to have that Shahbazyan Hernandez fight. I think that the Buckley Fiahlo one's a very, very dangerous one you got to have as well. And I do think that there is plenty of underdogs. I mean, Fiahlo, Hill, Demopulos, Urbina, Hooper, Gorimbo, all very, very, very good opportunities. Favorite sides, Talia Silva in cash, Hernandez my favorite target overall, Dern, Godinez, decent plays there. So hopefully everything I've said to you guys this week has given you, hopefully everything I said to you over the course of the video has given you enough information to go out there and destroy your DraftKings and betting slates this week. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section down below. 12 fight card, and honestly, I'm pretty excited for this one. No fights next week, so please enjoy the week off and take that opportunity to hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel. Feel free to follow me on Twitter and ask me any questions you have there at GamblesGordo. I'll be happy to talk to you guys there. DMs are always open. Love to talk fights. But that's going to do it for me here on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. Best of luck to all of you guys in your DFS and betting endeavors. Let's make some money, guys.